What we're going to do next is set this application up to work with Firebase storage. First few things we're going to do though is we're going to move these buttons into a row and add a few buttons down here. Then we're going to move all the authentication code to its own file. Let's go ahead and get started. Add those guys in there. And let's add the code to space these out. Let's grab this whole thing. And let's say upload. And we want a download button. We're just going to null those out for now. And let's actually take this. We want to get rid of the anonymous login and do sign in with Google. There we go. So we're going to have sign out, sign in with Google, and upload download. Let's go ahead and sign out, and let's kill the application. What we're going to do next is we are going to move all of our authentication code over into its own file called auth.dart. We're doing this for two reasons. A, we want to make our application modular, so if we ever want to reuse this code, we can just take the auth.dart file into another application. And we want to simplify things in main.dart because we're going to be getting pretty complex pretty quickly. So first thing we're going to do is we are just going to copy and paste some includes here, and then we're going to build out our functions. We're going to say future bool, and we'll call this sign out. Grab this. And we'll call that sign in Google. So pretty simple. We're just going to have three functions: sign out, ensure logged in, and sign in Google. Pretty self-explanatory what they do, but just in case, sign out's going to sign us out. Ensure logged in is going to make sure that we are actually logged in, and if not, it's going to throw an error. And sign in with Google, of course, signs in with Google. So we can pretty much go in here and copy and paste most of this. There's sign in with Google. Let's grab that. Now, of course, we're not setting state in this module, so what we need to do is get rid of this and just say, There we go. So really all we're doing is saying sign in the user. If the user is not null and the user is anonymous equal false, then return true. If those two conditions are not met, we're just going to return false. All right, now let's get our sign out code. Grab that. Now, ensure logged in is going to be a little bit different here. What we're going to say is Firebase user, and we'll call this Firebase user. And we want to get the current user. And we're just going to do some assertions here. We're going to assert the Firebase user is not equal null. And then we're going to assert that, let's do Firebase user is anonymous equal false. There we go. Just going to do a print statement. That way we know that was called and we didn't hit any of these asserts, even though we should see a nice fat error message if we did. All right, we've got our auth package, or I should say our auth file, and it's good to go. What I'm going to do next is just simply wipe these functions out because we don't need them. We could put sign anonymous in there, but I really don't need it. Now we're going to get rid of these. Get rid of these and replace it with, we'll say import and we're just going to import that as Firebase auth. Then we're going to go in here and we're going to make a few functions to work with here. For example, we are going to say kind of dumb doing it that way because it's always going to return true unless it just completely throws an error and crashes, but I wanted to do it this way. Set state. That way, if we wanted to, we could actually extend this in the future. And then we are just going to say set state. And if we wanted to, we could even break that down into a one-liner rather than having this multi-line statement going on here. There's our sign out code. We can even just copy this. Make a sign in. And we'll say sign in Google true. Then we are signed in. Otherwise, we want to say something happened. Before we go any further, I want to test and make sure all of that works. So let's go ahead and run this. Check our emulator. Going to take just a second for this to build and upload to the device. There we go. So let's go ahead and sign in with Google. And we are signed in. Our credentials were cached, so it didn't pop up the dialog. We can go ahead and sign out and then sign in again. And you can see it's working as expected. Let's go ahead and kill that. Now, let's work on actually adding storage to this program. And this is where we need to go out to pub.dartlang.org, and we're going to look at the Firebase package, or I should say the Firebase storage package. And this is 1.0. There's really not a whole lot here. It just kind of explains how to use it. There is a basic example, and I don't want to really say basic because it's a little on the convoluted side and it's kind of hard to follow. So let's go out to our pubspec.yaml. Going to do packages get. Beautiful finish with exit code 0, and we're going to go in here and we're going to make a new Dart file. We're going to call this one storage. There we go. We are going to add some imports, and I'm just going to copy and paste them out of my notes. That way I'm not wasting anybody's time. One thing to note is that we are actually including auth.dart, the file that we just made over here. We're doing that because we're going to need to make sure that we're actually logged in. We're really only going to have two functions in this file, upload and download, because storage is, well, very basic. There's really no live notifications or anything like that at least we're going to work with. So we're going to say future string upload. file, and we're just going to call this file, and then string, call this base name. There we go. And we're going to have another function. This one's also going to return a string, and it's just going to become download. So these two functions are pretty self-explanatory. Download is going to download the information from Firebase, where upload is going to upload the information to Firebase. So how do we actually get this to work? There's a lot of work we got to do, a lot of overhead we got to put in this thing still. To do that, we got to flip over to the main file and actually add some stuff in here. So let's go in here. Let's say import So we're just going to import storage as Firebase storage. Now we are going to add a few other things too, and I'm just going to copy and paste those in. And we're actually going to also use the path.dart package. Let's go ahead and give this a quick build just to make sure we're not missing anything and nothing blows up on us here. I know it seems like a bit of a waste of time to just sit here and build this over and over again, but I like to make sure as I'm going incrementally that something didn't blow up. For example, right here, boom, we got something wrong. And let's see here, map string required, da 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 da. Something was going on there. That's in the Firebase storage package. So our application runs, but we did have warnings from the package itself. Which, something that actually surprised me is that we didn't get errors from this because we're not actually returning anything. So I'm going to return just a blank string until we flesh those out. Hot reload picks up, no issues. Okay, good. Actually going to restart the whole app from scratch here, just to make sure we get a hot restart. Good. So at this point, it's safe to say our application is fairly stable. All right, let's take a closer look. We need to add in our configuration for storage. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go into our main, and we have to actually convert this to an async. For some reason, converting main to an async always makes me a little squeamish. I don't know why. Nothing bad is going to happen, but so we're going to say final, and we're going to say Firebase app. And we want Firebase app.configure. And we've got a few things that we need to put in here. So we've got a name along with options. So we're just going to call this Firebase app as our name. Probably help if that was actually a string. There we go. Now we need some options, and this is a little bit misleading. They're actually not options, they're configuration settings, and we can actually pull those from our JSON file. So let's actually go here, and we're going to say new Firebase options. Okay, so we've got a Google App ID, and we want the GMC sender. Whoops. I should say GCM sender, sorry. We also want an API key along with a project ID. If you're wondering how I just magically pulled those out of thin air and said that we needed them, I actually read the example for the Firebase storage app. It was a little bit cumbersome here, but if you go in here, you can see there is the actual what they're doing. In their example, they're doing between iOS and Android. I'm just going to do it straight for Android because we're only working with Android. But if you're working with iOS, it's good to know how to actually separate those two and that they are two different identifiers within Google. So jump in here. Now, figuring out what you actually need is a bit challenging here. First thing we need is this Google App ID. So let's find our JSON file here. There it is. So Google App ID. Let's look in here. And it's mobile SDK app ID is what we're really looking for. So we're going to grab that. And then we want the GCM sender ID. And I think if I remember correctly, this is actually the project number. There we go. Then we want the API key. If I remember correctly, this one is actually just API. There we go. There's our current API key. And project ID, which is this guy right here. Save that. Now, as cumbersome as that was, we're not done yet. We need to actually make a storage object. So we're going to say final Firebase storage. Call this storage equal new. And we want Firebase storage app. We're just going to say it's currently the app and storage bucket. This one is a little challenging to describe, and it was kind of a pain for me to find. Let's see if we can dig through and find this thing. Let's see, where is my Firebase? Go in here, go in here, go into our Firebase app and storage. Right here is what we're really looking for here. This is our storage. So that is our URL. We can copy the URL, but really it's just typically your app name at or .appspot.com, but they could change that at any time. You notice how you can actually upload a file manually, so you can put resources out here if you wanted to. There we go. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to actually hand this object over to our state. So what we need to do here is we need to modify our myapp. We're going to say storage, and then we want to just add the storage object in there. Notice how it's giving us a big fat "what are you talking about?" And we're going to go into myapp, and we're going to say Firebase storage, and we'll call this storage. My app, bang bang. Add that in. All right, now that we've got that in there, we can pretty much just copy this, put it right into our state. Now, if you're wondering if you should or could do the same thing with app, you really could, but you don't really need to. I'm not worried about it at this point. So we've got our storage is now cascading from main into that, and now we can access it anywhere we needed to. Let's go ahead and save this. And I want to rerun this whole thing just to make sure, because we've added a lot of configuration in here. and it's always good to test to make sure you're not running on bad configurations. Otherwise, we're going to be sitting here for hours debugging, trying to figure out why we can't upload or download. All right, so everything ran. I didn't get any error messages. Nothing blew up. You notice how those warnings we got from the storage object are now gone. Everything seems to be running okay. So let's go ahead and kill that. Now, we have two extra buttons here. We have upload, download. First thing, let's go in and actually flesh these out here. So let's say, let's get that. We're going to await auth.ensure logged in just to make sure that we are actually logged in. Now we're going to get a storage reference. We'll just call this ref. And we want Firebase storage instance, meaning we're just going to use the current instance. And we're going to say ref.child. Now, if you don't know what any of that is, it's because it's very confusing. And I actually do not like the way this is structured. Some people love it, but I cannot stand it. Basically, what we're doing is we're building a file structure here. So we're saying files test slash, and then I'm just going to put in base name. So essentially what we're doing here is we're saying instance.ref, and then we're making a child. What we're actually doing is not making a child. We're saying grab the child if it exists. If it doesn't exist, we're going to create it. So when you actually look in Firebase here, there's nothing. There's no children, no nothing, no file structure whatsoever. We're actually going to build the structure automatically. Some people love that. I do not. I don't like it simply because sometimes I want to say if it doesn't exist, do this. If it doesn't exist, do that, da 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 da. And it's very easy to just accidentally create it without doing that first. So anyways, we're going to make a storage task. And we want a storage upload task. We'll call this upload task. And we're going to put the file. So notice a couple things are going on here. We got a file and a name, meaning Firebase isn't going to automatically know what that name is because we could be creating that in memory, and we get to define where we want to put it in Firebase, and then we're just going to put the file. Now that we've got that put there, we're going to say URI we're going to say await upload task.future, meaning we're going to take that upload task and we're going to wait for it, and then we're going to get the download URL. Basically what we're saying is we want that full URL because this is actually going to be downloaded via HTTP or a web request. That's actually one of the cool features about Firebase is the download part is so much easier. So for the rest of this, rather than typing it all out, I'm just going to paste it because it's pretty simple. What we're doing here is we want the name, the bucket, the path, and then we're just going to print those out. The return, we're just going to say the location to string. And that's it. That's really all it takes to put a file up into Firebase. Just to double check and go over this, we're making sure we're authenticated. We're getting a reference to where we want to actually put this once we've got a valid reference, and we really should say if this is not null. Then we got an upload task, and we're saying upload task put, and that is a synchronous operation, so we have to await on that. And then we're just grabbing the download URL, and then we're just printing out some basic information about it so we can double check and see what the heck is actually going on here. Download is much, much simpler. We're going to say response data. I'm going to wait. And we are going to get that location. And then we're going to simply return the data body. If you have no idea what I just did, I highly encourage you to go back and watch my Dart intermediate and advanced tutorials. But anyways, we are getting the HTTP from this package here, and it is a variable named HTTP. So really we're just saying the response data, get it, and then display it out. All right, let's go ahead and give this sucker a good rebuild just to make sure, ultra paranoid, that this thing's gonna not work. Some of these items with Firebase have been very hit or miss, meaning they'd work one way and then not another. Or they would work, I would save my work, and then the next morning nothing works. I couldn't figure out why, and it turns out I missed a semicolon or something weird was going on. I just want to double check everything. All right, so far we are good to go on that, but we have done absolutely nothing. So let's go ahead and get some stuff done here. We have got our state, got our status. Let's go ahead and add a location that we're going to be tracking here. In our init state, we're saying the status is not authorized, and I want to go ahead and sign in automatically. So the first thing this is going to do is pop up and say, hey, sign in. You need to be authenticated to actually work with this stuff here. Then we're going to make some upload-download code. So we're going to put this over here, and we're going to say upload, and we want this to be an asynchronous operation. Kind of funny, someone emailed me and said, how important is asynchronous? It's kind of confusing and I don't want to learn it. Now it's like, you better learn to love asynchronous operations if you're going to work in Flutter and Dart. All right, we're going to kill that whole app. So now we've got our upload and download code, and this is going to be actually pretty simplistic here. We are just going to say directory, and let's call this system temp. And we want to just get the system temporary path. Remember that under the hood, your device, if it's Android, is pretty much, I don't want to say it's Linux, but it's very similar to a Linux system. I think the early Android devices actually did have a Linux core. That's probably all going to change in the future. When I say that's all going to change, I mean Google's probably going to write their own OS, and that is what all Androids are going to run. I think that OS was called Fuchsia. You might want to Google that. Anyway, so file, and what we're going to do here is we're going to create the file, and I don't want that, I just want create. Now the file, we are just going to say I want system tempter.path, and then I want to just call this foo.txt. Could call it fuzzy bunny slippers, whatever you want, doesn't really matter. All we're doing is we're creating a file, and then we're going to say file.write a string. And we really, really should await that, even though it should go super fast. And then we're going to say location equals await, and here we're going to say FB storage upload, and we're going to upload the file, and we want the base name to file.path. Now, if you're getting error messages on this line, base name unknown, I think I actually commented it. You need this path package right here. That's just kind of pretty important if you don't have it. That's something that will probably trip you up if you're not really paying attention. So now we're just going to do a set state, and we're going to say location equals the location, and the status equals uploaded. That way we just have some graphical feedback of what actually happened. And then I actually want to go ahead and print this out. Now our download is going to be a little bit simpler, as it seems to be. Let's go here and we'll say location, and we're going to say .isEmpty. So we're just going to do a little bit of protection here and say, hey, you're going to have to upload before you can download. That way you're not going to try to accidentally download something that does not exist. Probably be super helpful if we just return right out of this function. There we go. Now, if we've gotten to this point, we mean business. We know the file's there. We've actually uploaded it. It's got to exist at some point. We're just going to download it. So we're going to say URI, and we're going to say location. And we are going to just parse this location out. Now we want the string data from that. And we are going to await the FBase storage that we made, and we want to download. Once we have that, we're going to set state, and we're going to say status equal downloaded, and let's do this. All right. At this point, I think all we have to do now is wire in our functions. We're going to upload, download. Before we run this, just to verify, let's pop open Firebase. We have absolutely nothing in storage. We can actually just flip over and come back. Absolutely nothing in there. Let's take a quick look at rules. This is something that will trip you up if you don't authenticate. You'll see the security rules in here that says allow read write if request.auth not equal null. Notice that not equal null. If you're not authenticated and you try to do this, the default rules are going to kick you right back and you're just going to get an error message saying failed to upload. You can very easily get rid of this and just put a star here and then put a semicolon. So you could say like star semicolon. And get rid of that. Probably not exactly what we wanted, but whoops. I prefer that we keep things authenticated. That keeps evildoers from being out there. The rule has been published. You must be authenticated to do this. That's why in our code, the first thing I did in init state was say, hey, sign in. All right, let's save this. Let's run it, cross our fingers, hope that our code is working good. And if we have done our due diligence and typed everything out the way it should, this should just work flawlessly. All right, notice how I didn't touch a button. We're signed in. Now I'm going to upload. Uploaded. You can see our URL is this big long URL named full, bucket, path, uploaded to, and this big long HTTP friendly path. If we flip back to Firebase, go to our files, you can see now we have a file structure, /file, /test, and there's foo. And we can actually examine this file and see what's in there. Now, how did we get /file/test? If we look at this, actually it's in storage, file/test. So we could build whatever path we wanted here. That is how you get a reference to a child and actually build the path out. Now, we've got it uploaded. Let's go ahead and download it. Downloaded hello world. So we've actually downloaded the contents of that file as a string via an HTTP request.